fifth grade. We started talking about in detail arteries on Tuesday, and we talked about two terms. One has to do with the heart, and one has to do with the lungs. Who remembers which is which? Aubrey, what do you think? That's right. Coronary means related to the heart. Pulmonary means related to your lungs. And then we talked about arteries and how arteries are a muscular, very strong muscular blood vessel that carries blood to the rest of the body. And that your aorta, which is the largest one, is about the size of a garden hose. If you've gone out and looked at your garden hoses, you can tell that's pretty thick. So like if someone gets injured in that area, that's pretty fatal. Today we're going to be talking about more in-depth capillaries and veins and what those do and how all three of those things kind of work together to make sure that we are one healthy person. All right, let's look at our capillaries here. Capillaries are the smallest of the blood vessels, and they're so small that they can be seen only with a microscope. So if I was to open up my body and pull out all the blood vessels, remember they can wrap how many times around the earth? That's right, 2.5 times around the earth. And our tiny, tiny capillaries that we cannot see, it takes about 10 capillaries to equal the thickness of one of your pieces of hair on your head. So go ahead, right now, if you don't mind the feeling of it, pull one of your pieces of hair out of your head. And I want you to look at that. And then I want you to think that if you were to divide that into 10 smaller pieces lengthwise, that's about the size of a capillary. So let's look at the examples over here. This would be an artery, the size of an artery. This would be about the size of a vein. So you can see which ones are bigger than the others. Here's the artery, here's the veins. We'll come back to this picture later. But if we zoom into this area right here just a little bit more, we have these little sections right here. These are the capillaries, these tiny, tiny things over here. So we take this section right here and then whoop, zoom it over so that we're looking at it even closer, and we have our capillary here and our capillary there. Okay? Next one. So our capillaries spread out from our arterioles, which is a web of blood vessels over here, and we have a lot of these webs. Every cell in the body is close to these webs right here. So you can see here is our arteries. We have our arterioles here, and then this section right here, right in the middle, this is going to be our capillaries. And remember, this is the U-turn spot for our blood cells to go back to the lungs to pick up more oxygen to bring to the cells. So every single cell in the body is close to a capillary. Now, if every cell is close to a capillary and everything in our body is made up of cells, that's a lot of capillaries in our body. Oops, let's go back. All right. Now, even though capillaries are very small, capillaries have a very, very important job. Okay, so if you're small, man, you still got big work to do. But in terms of our blood vessels, our capillaries are very, very small, and they have these very, very, very thin walls. Okay, so as the blood and the capillaries start to flow past other cells, oxygen and nutrients in the blood will pass through those capillary walls into the surrounding cells. So let's think about it this way. If I have a capillary and the walls are very, very thin, and I have a blood cell coming towards it, let's just say that this is my capillary wall, and I have a blood cell that's coming in, the cells that are near it need the oxygen, so the oxygen kind of sneaks out, whoop, through that, goes to where it needs, and then the blood cells will enter back into the capillary and then return back to get more oxygen. So it's that transportation system again, where those capillaries are so thin that oxygen can get out through it to get to all the cells around them. Okay? All right, let's keep going. So we can see that every single part of our body has this area that has, we have our arteries, and then we have the U-turn sections, and then we have our veins to bring stuff back to our heart. And again, we have our arteries that go to the small arterioles, and then we have our capillaries in the middle that move on. So at the same time that carbon dioxide and other waste from the cells pass into those capillaries and they're carried away by the blood. And this process keeps cells healthy. So let's picture this. Let's say that I have one drop of blood right here, and it has already gone to the lungs. Okay, so it started here, went to the lungs, and it opened up its door and allowed oxygen to join that vehicle. And then it went back to the heart, and then it got pumped out of the aorta, and it went down to, let's say, our stomach and intestines, and it's carrying that oxygen. And as it gets to here, any cell that's near these capillaries, it drops that oxygen off. But if there is oxygen, then there has to be a waste product, and that waste product is carbon dioxide. So when our cells are done with the oxygen, just like when we exhale carbon dioxide, our cells also have to get rid of that carbon dioxide. So the carbon dioxide, the oxygen gets off, and the carbon dioxide gets on, and the carbon dioxide joins that blood cell to go back up to where it needs to go. It goes to our lungs, so that we can exhale that carbon dioxide and then pick up more oxygen. And that keeps our cells healthy. So let's review for a second. So we have our arteries that get blood from the heart, that send it out from the heart, which again, the other word for like the heart stuff is coronary. Goes out from the heart, goes to the rest of the body with oxygen in those blood cells, and it goes to where the capillaries are, and at that U-turn spot where the capillaries are, the oxygen gets off, goes to those cells, and the waste product gets on the vehicle of blood, which is what? That's right, carbon dioxide. And that cell now with carbon dioxide, that blood cell with carbon dioxide, now comes back up to the lungs, and when it's in our lungs, we exhale, and we get rid of that carbon dioxide. And when we inhale, we take in a bunch of oxygen, and it goes right back into that blood drop vehicle, back to the heart, and then back to the rest of the body. And that whole process takes about how long again? That's right, about 45 seconds. All right, now let's talk about our veins. So we've talked about our arteries, our arterioles. We have our capillaries in the middle here. And then we have the smallest part of the vein, which is called a venule, okay? So this side we have arterioles, that's like a mini artery, and then we have our venules here, which are mini veins. And these are the connecting parts that could make up the capillaries. These venules eventually become larger blood vessels that we call veins. So veins now return blood back to the heart, okay? Veins, and you can see they're all represented in blue here. They also go all throughout our body, because wherever blood gets taken to by the arteries, there has to be a way for it to get back to the heart, and that would be because of the veins. So let's look at this picture again to compare the thickness of arteries and veins. Again, here's our artery. You can see how thick it is. And then here's our vein. You can see how much smaller it is in comparison to the artery. Vein walls are thinner than artery walls are, and the muscle fibers in veins are not as strong as the muscle fibers in arteries. And let's see why that is. Muscles in your body are muscles, like our biceps, our triceps, our quadriceps, our calves, all of those are the things that help push blood through our veins and back up to our heart. So the heart, like the heart, veins have what we call valves right here. Just like in the heart, we have those valves that keep the blood from flowing backwards, okay? So our heart, we have blood that flows in how many directions? That's right, one direction. We don't want it to go backwards. And just like in our veins, we don't want blood to go backwards. So let's look at the comparison of our arteries and veins. Arteries have these thick muscles right here, and they're just open tubes that contract and relax like that water balloon I showed you on Tuesday. But our veins, on the other hand, because they aren't strong muscles, they have to have a way for that blood to not flow backwards. Think about it. Why would it be important that our blood did not flow backwards in our veins? What do you think? Okay, all the veins in the body flow into two large veins. So let's go back actually to answer that question. Why is it important that we don't have blood that can flow backwards? Well, if there's no muscle that's pushing like the walls of the arteries, if there's nothing that's pushing the blood through the veins, all that blood could pool in certain sections, and the blood wouldn't be able to get back up to our heart. That's why we have these valves. So as the water pushes through, the flap opens. As blood pushes through, the flap opens, and when the flap closes, the blood just stays there, so it can't go back down and pool into these bigger pools of blood. Okay, so all the veins in the body flow into two large veins in the body, and they're about 1 inch in diameter. Think about that, about 1 inch in diameter. That's how big they are across. Okay, both veins carry blood into this right ventricle over here. Okay, remember, it comes into the right ventricle and then out up the right atrium. It goes this way here. We have two. One is called the superior vena cava, and that carries blood from the upper part of your body, like your head, your neck, your chest, your arms. And then you have your inferior vena cava, which carries blood from the lower body. That's your legs, your feet, your abdomen, your waist, okay? A good way to remember that is superior means like high above, inferior means like lower than everything else. And we're gonna stop there. All right, so we have our capillaries, which are the U-turn spots that have really thin walls, and that's the spot where oxygen gets off and carbon dioxide gets back on, so that we can get rid of that waste product by exhaling and then take in more oxygen by inhaling. And then we have our veins. The smallest part of those veins are called the venules that connect to the capillaries. And then we have our veins. Remember, veins aren't as big as arteries. They're a lot thinner, and they don't have a muscular wall to them. So they have these valves to make sure that when blood flows through, it can't go back down or it can't go in the reverse direction, because we still want it to flow in one direction. Your assignment for today is to, same thing as Monday and Tuesday, I want you to tell me this time 2 things that you learned about today's lesson and comment on my webpage right here. Again, I love you guys and I miss you. Bye.